The Norse gods knew how they were going to die. They knew the names of the monsters that would kill them. They knew which of them would fall first. They knew the world would burn, and the sky would crack open, and the seas would swallow everything. They knew all of this because Odin had seen it. He had sacrificed his eye and hung from the world tree and bled for the knowledge of what was coming. And what was coming was the end of everything. They could not stop it. They could not change it. They could not run from it. All they could do was prepare and fight when the moment arrived. This is the story of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the death of the world, and the most devastating apocalypse in all of mythology. Ragnarok did not arrive without warning. The end of the world announced itself slowly, like a fever building in the body of the earth. The first sign was the age of axes, the age of swords, the age of wind, the age of wolves. It was a time when the bonds between people broke down, brothers killed brothers, fathers turned on sons, oaths were shattered, loyalty disappeared. The world descended into a moral darkness so deep that it poisoned everything. Then came Fimbulwinter, the great winter, the winter that had no spring. 3 consecutive winters with no summer between them. Snow fell from every direction. The sun gave no warmth. Rivers froze. Crops died. Animals starved. Humans huddled in their homes and watched the world turn white and silent and dead. The earth itself was shutting down. In the sky, 2 wolves that had been chasing the sun and moon since the beginning of time finally caught their prey. Skoll swallowed the sun. Hati devoured the moon. The stars vanished from the sky. For the first time since creation, the world was plunged into total, absolute darkness. The ground began to shake. Trees were uprooted. Mountains crumbled. And deep beneath the earth, chains that had held for centuries began to groan and snap. Fenrir, the great wolf, had been chained since he was young. The gods had tricked him into wearing Gleipnir, a binding forged from impossible things. The sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish. These were things that did not exist, and that was what made the chain unbreakable. Until now. Fenrir had been growing for centuries, his rage had been building for centuries, and when the world began to die around him, the chain that could not break finally broke. Fenrir rose to his full height and opened his jaws so wide that his upper jaw touched the sky and his lower jaw scraped the earth. Fire poured from his eyes. The ground shook with every step. Beneath the ocean, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, Loki's second child, released its tail. For ages, the serpent had encircled the entire world, holding it together in a ring of scales. Now it let go and rose from the sea. The oceans surged. Tidal waves crashed across every coast. The serpent's venom sprayed into the sky, poisoning the clouds and the air itself. And in a cave deep underground, the burning venom that had dripped onto Loki's face for untold years finally stopped. His wife Sigin's bowl was no longer needed, because Loki was free. His bonds made from his own son's entrails dissolved, and the trickster rose from the darkness one final time. Every monster the gods had bound, every threat they had chained and buried and tried to forget. All of them were loose at once. Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, stood on the rainbow bridge and raised the Gjallarhorn to his lips. He blew, and the sound carried across all 9 realms. Every god heard it. Every warrior in Valhalla heard it. Every living creature in every corner of existence heard it. It was the sound they had been dreading since the beginning of time, the call to the final battle. In Valhalla, the doors opened. 540 doors, each wide enough for 800 warriors to march through side by side. The Einherjar, the chosen dead, the greatest warriors who had ever lived and died in battle, stepped out into the dying light for the last time. They had been feasting, fighting, and training for this moment since the day they arrived. Odin had spent his entire existence collecting them for this single purpose. On the other side of the battlefield, the enemy was assembling. Loki sailed from the east on Naglfar, a ship built from the fingernails of the dead. Behind him came the legions of Hel's domain, the dishonored dead, the forgotten, the lost. From the south, Surtr, the fire giant, marched at the head of the sons of Muspelheim. His sword blazed brighter than the sun that no longer existed. The heat of his advance melted the ground beneath his feet. The frost giants charged from Jotunheim. Jormungandr slithered across the land, crushing everything in its path. Fenrir ran with his jaws open, devouring the earth itself as he advanced. The Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connected Asgard to the rest of the world, shattered under the weight of the advancing armies. The last road between the realms was broken. There was no retreat for anyone. This would end here. Odin rode first into battle. He mounted Sleipnir, his eight-legged horse, and charged directly at Fenrir. The Allfather, the one-eyed god who had spent his entire existence preparing for this moment, met the wolf he had chained all those centuries ago. He thrust his spear Gungnir at the beast, but Fenrir was too vast, too ancient, too furious. The wolf opened his impossible jaws and swallowed Odin whole. The king of the gods was gone. But Odin's son, Vidar, witnessed his father's death and did not hesitate. He was known as the Silent God, a figure rarely mentioned in the myths until this moment. Vidar stepped onto Fenrir's lower jaw and with one mighty act tore the wolf apart from the inside. Fenrir, the monster that had haunted the gods since the beginning, was finally destroyed. But it was too late for Odin. Across the battlefield, Thor found Jormungandr. The god of thunder and the world serpent had been enemies since the day Thor tried to pull the serpent from the ocean during a fishing trip. Now they faced each other for the last time. Thor swung Mjolnir with everything he had. Blow after blow crashed into the serpent's skull. The thunder shook the heavens. And finally, with one last devastating strike, Thor killed Jormungandr. But the serpent's venom had already done its work. Thor staggered backward. He managed 9 steps away from the body of his greatest enemy. And then Thor, the strongest of all the gods, the protector of humanity, collapsed and died. Heimdall and Loki found each other in the carnage. The watchman who had guarded the bridge of the gods and the trickster who had burned it all down. They fought with a hatred that went deeper than the war itself. And they killed each other. Both fell at the same moment, locked together in death, as they had been locked in opposition in life. The god Freyr fought Surtr, the fire giant, but Freyr had given away his magical sword long ago for the love of a giantess, and he faced Surtr with nothing but his bare hands and his courage. It was not enough. Surtr cut him down. One by one, the gods fell. Tyr, the one-handed god of justice, died fighting the hound Garm. Garm died with him. Every matchup the prophecy had foretold played out exactly as Odin had seen it. Every death he had foreseen came to pass. He had known this would happen. He had prepared his entire existence for it. And it was never going to be enough. When the fighting was over, Surtr stood on the field of the dead and raised his burning sword, and he unleashed fire across the 9 realms. The flames consumed everything. Asgard burned, Midgard burned, the forests, the mountains, the oceans, all of it caught fire. Yggdrasil, the great world tree that had connected every realm since the beginning of existence, trembled and groaned as the flames climbed its trunk and devoured its branches. The roots that plunged into the wells of wisdom and fate turned to ash. The earth sank into the sea. The sky cracked and fell. The stars, which had already been swallowed, were now truly gone. Everything that had ever existed, every god, every hero, every temple, every song, every memory, was erased in a single, all-consuming inferno. There was nothing left, no light, no sound, no world. The universe that had been built from the body of a giant, held together by a tree, and ruled by gods who loved and fought and sacrificed. That universe was gone. And then something extraordinary happened. The earth rose again from the sea, green and fresh and clean, as if it had never been touched. Waterfalls cascaded down new mountains. Fields of grain grew without being planted. The land was more beautiful than anything that had come before. A new sun appeared in the sky, the daughter of the old sun, born before her mother was devoured. She was brighter and warmer than her mother had ever been, and she would never be chased by wolves. 2 human survivors emerged from the trunk of Yggdrasil, where they had hidden during the destruction. Their names were Lif and Lifthrasir, life and life's yearning. They had survived on nothing but the morning dew, and now they stood on the new earth and looked out at a world that was waiting to be filled. Some of the gods survived as well. Vidar, who had avenged his father Odin by destroying Fenrir. Vali, Odin's other son. Modi and Magni, sons of Thor, who recovered their father's hammer Mjolnir from the battlefield. And Balder, beautiful, beloved Balder, whose murder by Loki had set the entire chain of events in motion, returned from the realm of the dead. Hel released him. He walked into the light of the new sun and took his place in the new world. The surviving gods gathered on the plain where Asgard had once stood. They found golden chess pieces in the grass, the same pieces the old gods had played with in the earliest days of creation. They picked them up and began again. Ragnarok is not just the most dramatic apocalypse in mythology. It is one of the most philosophically powerful stories ever told. Most apocalypse stories are about punishment. The world is wicked, so God destroys it. The flood comes because humanity has sinned. The fire falls because the people have turned away. But Ragnarok is not a punishment. The gods did not fail. They did not sin. They simply lived in a universe where endings are inevitable. The serpent always gnaws at the root of the tree. The wolf always grows larger. The chains always weaken. Entropy always wins. And the Norse response to this was not despair, it was courage. Odin knew he would die in Fenrir's jaws. He rode into battle anyway. Thor knew the serpent's venom would kill him. He swung his hammer anyway. The entire philosophy of the Viking world was contained in this story. You fight, not because you will win, but because the fight itself is what matters. And then, and this is the part that people often forget, the world comes back. Not the same world, a better one. The children of the gods carry on. The humans survive. Balder returns. The golden pieces are found in the grass. It is not a story about the end. It is a story about the fact that after every ending, something new begins. The twilight of the gods was never meant to be the final word. It was meant to be a turning point. And that is why, 1,000 years after the last Viking sailed, we are still telling this story. If you haven't watched the stories that led here, start with Odin, the god who sacrificed everything preparing for this battle. Then watch Loki, the trickster who made it all happen. Subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. We'll see you there.